Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on today's ESA webinar, Future Proof Security, People Counting with Integrated Touchless Access Control. The world is ready to return to work. Are you familiar with the security tools needed to help safeguard employees and visitors upon re-entering the workplace? Security upgrades are an investment for your customers, but you can help ease cost apprehensions by providing solutions that are future proof. This webinar will showcase integrated people counting with touchless access control, occupancy control systems, and best practices. I'm Jillian Bateman, ESA's Chief Development Officer, and I'll be facilitating our discussion today. Before we dive in with Larry Reed, our expert from ZK Techo, I'd like to provide some tips for those of you joining us on your very first ESA webinar. First, welcome. ESA, or the Electronic Security Association, is the largest and longest standing association serving the pro-installed electronic security and life safety industry. Our members are integrators, dealers, monitoring centers, and even manufacturers and service providers in the space. We are the voice of electronic security and life safety. If your company is a member of the association, thank you. And we hope you're taking advantage of all of your ESA benefits to leverage growth and connections for your team. If your company is not yet an ESA member, check us out. You'd be surprised at the power of membership. You can get a feel for all of the ESA benefits, including savings on business insurance, training, sales team coaching, certifications that satisfy state licensing, and more at esaweb.org. All callers, you'll be muted for the duration of this session, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. If a question or a comment pops up at any time during today's presentation, click on that Q&A icon or the chat icon below and pose your questions. I'll make sure we save some time at the end of today's presentation to pitch those questions over to Larry. We'll also be recording today's webinar, so you can rewatch the on-demand video at your leisure and share it with colleagues. Just give us until tomorrow and we'll email you a link to the recording. We at ESA realize your time is valuable and we appreciate you spending some of that time with us today. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Larry Reed. Larry is a 15-year veteran in the biometrics industry. He's currently CEO of ZK Techo USA, where he presides over several business units, including door access control, entrance control, time and attendance, and biometrics AI. Larry has specific application expertise in the fields of physical access control and time and attendance, and has helped well over 100 enterprise and SMB companies integrate a variety of biometrics devices with their respective application software. Larry, let's dive in.
Hey, Julie, thanks for the warm intro, and thank you and ESA. To those on the call, we've been an ESA vendor for over 5 years, and each year the information, the training that ESA provides, it's just so helpful to dealers and vendors alike. So I want to encourage anyone who's not an ESA member, you definitely want to join. Not only is there technology education, but business education, and just such a valuable resource to all of us. So, Jillian, I thank you and the team at ESA.
Thanks, Larry.
I can also tell you, most of their educational content is always relevant to the times. And certainly last year with COVID-19, it really turned the industry upside down. And a lot of priorities that existed prior to COVID-19 may not necessarily be today's priorities. So the purpose of today's discussion will be addressing security in the new norm. I, for one, am tired of hearing this expression, but it is reality. There is a new norm. A lot of technology that was undergoing very slow change has now rapidly emerged and now is upon us today, and it's here for us to take advantage of. So I also want to emphasize to everyone on this call, this is not future technology. This is all commercially available technology that we're going to be reviewing. And it's not just a product sale. These are very, very important technologies that can help your clients not only improve their security, but also help them reopen their business, which of course is paramount today. No need for security if you're not operating. So the premise of this discussion will, of course, be utilizing this technology to help customers reopen and also become more efficient, lot more cost savings, which actually should free up more money for all you on the call so they can pay for your professional services. So let's jump into this now. So before COVID-19, most everyone on the call, we all made a living either providing fire suppression equipment and doing inspections. Certainly access control, whether you're a locksmith or providing electronic security. And then, of course, there's intrusion and burglar, fire alarm, as well as surveillance cameras. So all these are very, very important aspects of low voltage security and where we spent most of our time. Some of you want to follow all these things, or perhaps maybe you only focus on one of them. But clearly with COVID-19, priorities from a customer perspective have changed. And even though all these security technologies are very important and they continue to be so, today it's all about how do we reopen business. And really it comes down to one word, it's confidence. The government needs to have confidence that if they allow businesses to reopen, there won't be another wave of COVID. And throughout the country, it's always in the news. Many states are opening. Some are opening prematurely, and there's a follow-up wave of COVID. Other states perhaps are a little bit reluctant to reopen, or they're doing so in a very, very moderate pace. So certainly not all the government is confident at this point. Certainly your employees, when they return to work, they want to feel confident that there's no one sick in the office that's going to get them sick. So they need to be confident. That's why a lot of workers still today don't want to travel. They don't want to leave the comfort of their homes. So that's also a struggle. And of course, customers who are paying everyone's bills. So customers can't return to school if they're students. The customers can't return to shopping and leisure activities unless they feel confident that they won't be exposed to COVID. So it's all about reinstilling confidence before a business can truly open up as it had before the pandemic. So this was a big topic last year and it still continues to be so. To reinstill confidence, typically people are now having their body temperature measured when they return to the office or perhaps when they're visiting a business establishment, whether it be a restaurant or a retail establishment. Measuring temperature is common. It's relatively new to the US, but if any of you have traveled overseas, the moment you step into another country's airport, you will have security staff approaching you with a handheld thermometer and checking for temperature. Now, it's not a guarantee that you're ill, but certainly it's a very common sign that you might have some type of infection your body is fighting off. And that's why we still continue seeing temperature detection. Some people have actually gone very public and saying this does not work, or it's not a cure for COVID. And you're hearing a lot of sensationalized things in the news. I find it quite comical and annoying, admittedly, that whenever I'm interviewed, whenever I talk about best practices, I have to mention worst case scenarios and how to overcome them, and then I get into best practices. And inevitably, that reporter only writes down the worst, most horrible, sensationalized things that come out of my mouth or from my writing, and that's what makes the news. So I caution you all, whenever there's any technology you want to learn about, that vendor should make it available to you to test it, whether it's for free or in a no-risk situation. But please don't read everything you see in the news because those people just want to sell attention. So I can assure you, body temperature continues to be very, very common amongst business establishments that want to reopen. They'll often even pay someone to do it, and that's a lot of money, paying someone $13 to $15 an hour to scan temperature. But it happens. You can save a lot more money by automating it. But this presentation is not about selling anybody on body temperature detection readers. It's all about best practices and all the technology that's available to you to help businesses reopen. So in addition to temperature detection, people counting now is also very important because you want to maintain social distancing. So a lot of the times you can measure the square footage of a room and then divide by 6 or whatever the math is to ensure that there is no overcrowding. So people counting now is also becoming very, very popular, again, to help enforce social distancing. And typically, again, businesses will pay someone to stand at the door with a handheld clicker, and they'll just start clicking away. And then if they've determined too many people in the room, they'll physically stop everybody, and the line backs up, and so on. So that's a manual means of people counting. But there are far more automated and easier ways to perform people counting that have far more accountability than entrusting a minimum wage person just to tally on a piece of paper how many people are in the room. So we're going to be talking about people counting. And more important than people counting is what happens when you've exceeded the room occupancy? Well, you don't want any more people coming into the room because then that presents another health and safety hazard. So we're also going to talk about technology that can actually restrict access to a room once occupancy has been reached, or maximum occupancy has been reached. And the picture that you can see on the screen is a very, very common picture. This especially happened during Black Friday. I believe it was last year when there were even reported some deaths where sadly, during the rush of people were actually trampled upon. So, so people counting is very, very important for a number of reasons, not just for social distancing, but also to ensure safety when you potentially have a very, very large, unruly crowd who are rushing in just to get a discount on a television set. So let's have a close look now at people counting and occupancy control. Now, in the video that you'll be seeing, I don't believe you can hear the sound, so I'm going to narrate. But people counting now can be automated. ZK is not the only manufacturer of these devices, but by putting an access control device to a gate or a barrier or entry, you can now actually prevent anyone from entering the room once maximum occupancy has been reached. So this is a far more reliable way to ensure that room occupancy has not been gone over the maximum allowed. It also provides accountability. It's not a matter of just tallying on a piece of paper how many people are in and around the room. So if you've seen this video, and I encourage you to look at other videos on our YouTube channel, these devices are basically displaying how many people are allowed in, and that will count down as you have more and more people entering the room. And it'll also have a meter as far as what percentage of maximum occupancy has been met. And then because the devices are synchronized with one another, as people are walking in and the head count goes up, as people exit the room, the head count will drop. And again, once you reach maximum occupancy, those turnstiles will remain frozen. They will not open until the allowed occupancy returns to normal. So let's kind of have a closer look. I mentioned a few reasons why people should be concerned with occupancy control, but first and foremost, it prevents overcrowding, and those locks and those gates can remain locked if they go beyond maximum occupancy. Now, that all depends upon the end user. How many people do they wish to allow admission to a room? Perhaps social distancing might be on your mind, or if social distancing ever becomes a thing of the past, certainly from a safety perspective, you never want to have too many people in a room. Many times at the retail establishments, you'll also see fire marshals posting messages on what's the maximum room occupancy in case there's an emergency or fire and flood. So having occupancy control is critical. It also shows customers that a business proprietor is serious about their health and safety. So I always recommend to end user clients, they should promote everything they put in place that actually promotes health, safety, and encourages customers to come visit with them. It's also wonderful for employee morale, and the employees also know that their employer is mindful of their health and safety. But in addition to health and safety, having occupancy control or people counting, it also improves operational efficiency. Because imagine if you're the business owner and you need to know when is the highest traffic of customers visiting your establishment, so you know how to staff your business properly. And of course, labor can be very expensive. I mean, you may discover for whatever reason that people aren't shopping at your establishment maybe on a Saturday or one afternoon. You can also keep track of inventory levels and want to make decisions on when to cool your business and when they heat your business and so on. So having that kind of data of knowing who's visiting your establishment is very, very important, not just for health and safety, but for also operational efficiency and reducing costs. And all part of that bottom line is about saving money. You know, if you can eliminate the need to employ people when you have no customers, that's critical. And when you automate electronically, you always have accountability. That data is always absolute, it's correct, you store it in a database, and then you can generate reports anytime you may need them, whether it's for auditing purposes with the government, or again, simply just to maximize operational efficiency. So people counting, not just about health and safety, but you can help business owners improve their efficiency, and that will free up money. And when money is freed up, then they can spend it on your other products and services that you wish to promote to them. So you saw in the video, let's have a closer look at how this technology works. I don't want to suggest for the moment that my company invented people counting or occupancy control. There are many, many different ways to implement this type of solution. However, some are much more cost effective and easier to implement than others. So even though this may be widely acceptable, you may not ever have thought of just consolidating all this technology onto a single hardware platform, and this way eliminating a lot of other third-party peripheral components, whether it be third-party cameras or streaming video with doing analytics. That's back to a cloud, so you have to pay for a recurring fee. That's one way that people provide people counting and occupancy control. But there's a far less expensive way to do it. That's if you embed all that technology into a reader connected to the turnstile. So that's what the next few slides will speak to. And you saw it in that video. So it will begin with having an access control terminal that has a relay contact that can be wired directly to a gate, or it can have a Wiegand output to go to an access control panel. But regardless, the one device is actually recognizing registered users, while it's also counting unregistered visitors. So this way, if you want to account for the people who actually work at that business establishment, you can have them enter using any means of credentials, whether it's face recognition or card and so on, but they are counted as a single person. And then, of course, visitors are not registered on your system, but they also need to be counted. So you put one of these devices onto a turnstile or a gate or a door or any other barrier, and as each registered or unregistered person passes through, that reader will take a count. Now, we presume prior, the reader has already been programmed with how many people are allowed in the room. And again, the end user can decide that based upon if they just want to be cognizant of social distancing, or perhaps the local fire marshal came by and set them a threshold. But whatever that number is, the end user can pre-program that into the device, and then the device begins counting. And in our technology, as long as that room is below maximum occupancy, the display will always be showing the color green. So that's where you always know green is a go, and it's okay to continue having people enter the room. And the display will remain green as more and more people are entering the room. So that's become apparent to anybody that the room is available and people can still continue entering. Now, once the occupancy reaches 100%, and again, that's a preset number by the end user or you, the installer, at that point, the device will then display red, and it will note that the room has reached 100% occupancy and that 0 people are allowed in. Now, if you just wish to have that for display purposes, and you don't want to have, you don't want to intrude upon anybody's security, and you want to provide them, access as long as they like, you don't have to connect the device to a turnstile or gate. You can simply just have it flash red, and then at least at that point, people can self-monitor, or you do also have the option of paying someone to stand next to the device and manually allow people in or out. Even though the end user now is still paying for that person, because you're using an electronic device, at least you can be assured you have complete reporting capability, accountability, and so on. Many small businesses think the fix for either scanning for body temperature or even people counting, is to hire a temp agency and just pay someone 13, 14, $15 an hour. But you have no certainty that that person is actually doing their job effectively. You have no idea if that person has friends that they're allowing into the store. I mean, certainly still now in shopping malls, I see that before every retail store, they always have one person standing in front. And I really have no idea, rhyme or reason, how they decide who's allowed in and who's not. They're certainly not, checking any type of electronic monitoring systems. So you want accountability to ensure that you're not overextending that maximum allowed people count. Now, at ZK Techo, just a slight bit of self-promotion. We know that a lot of these circumstances they could be temporary. Who knows how long body temperature scanning is going to be needed, how long people counting is going to be needed. I mean, you don't want any of these devices to lose their value when circumstances change. So we future-proof all our technology. And that's very important for everyone on the call. There are a lot of vendors who have a fix for any problem, and perhaps they even have it at a price that meets your budget. But you always want to find out, what happens after a certain circumstance changes. Will they have to, have another investment in more technology? You always want to make sure that solutions are scalable and they're upgradable, and that you don't have to rip and replace them within a year or two or after circumstances change. So we maximize functionality and we future-proof these people counting devices because they also are complete standalone access control devices. So you can wire them, as I mentioned, to the turnstile, to your gate, to any type of electrical barrier. You can also link them to a camera. Perhaps anytime someone passes through the turnstile or a maximum occupancy rate has been reached, maybe you want to trigger a camera so you have a video recording. And in addition to a video recording, maybe the facility manager or whoever's in charge of the store, maybe they want to receive an email notification whenever maximum occupancy is reached. So again, many vendors have a particular solution to fix a particular problem, but when you're spending money, you want to look beyond that and make sure you have the most value possible from whatever you're investing in. So whatever product you're using for people counting or occupancy control, check to make sure can it also control access, can it communicate with your camera system, with your visitor management system, your video management system. Always make sure that you want to get the maximum utility value. So these devices you've seen throughout I think there are over 100 suppliers, in fact. And what most people don't realize is these body temperature detection devices you see on the screen, they're only really made by a handful of manufacturers. My company, ZK Techo, is one of those few that fits on a handful. Most other companies are just reselling someone else's technology. So whenever you invest in any technology, not that any reseller will openly admit it, but you want to find out, where are these devices being made and where are the experts whenever you need to have tech support or if you want to have customization. And rarely are all the components of the device manufactured by the same company. These body temperature detection devices, one obvious technology, of course, is body temperature. But what people don't realize is there are many different types of thermal sensors used on these devices. So if anyone ever goes on the internet and says, well, this one product is bad or this one vendor is bad, they're probably only looking at just one model of an entire product line. And as you all know, as consumers, there's a technology that's fitted for every application. For instance, we often teach best practices at ZK Techo with regards to temperature detection. Now, there are basically two types of sensors, and I'll touch upon that on the next few slides. But the least expensive sensor is called a thermopile sensor. And this sensor works terrific as long as the device is installed in a climate-controlled room. You can't have any changes in temperature. You can't have any drafts. And if you can assure yourself of that operating environment, you can actually save upwards to 25% on each reader by installing a thermopile sensor-based device. However, if you're not installing it in ideal circumstances, if this will be installed near an exterior door where it's subject to drafts or varying degrees of temperature, well, then the thermopile sensor is not going to perform very well. You're going to want to use a different type of technology called the thermographic imaging camera. But anyone who's bad mouthing body temperature, all they're going to tell you is the absolute worst case scenarios. They're going to choose a horrible environment, pick someone's product, and then sensationalize it by saying it doesn't work. This technology works phenomenally well as long as if it's the correct application. I often remind people, you can use a wrench to bang in a nail. It'll probably work. It'll be much better if you use a hammer, but having a hammer hit a nail doesn't usually make headlines. So anyway, point being is you really want to speak to the manufacturer and understand, best practice for any type of device. This device is, I mentioned before, if you've seen them on the internet, they typically have an 8-inch display. They have either a thermopile or a thermographic imaging camera, and they even can do face recognition. However, ZK Techo does one extra step. We also allow these devices to do palm recognition. And that's really key because there are certain states in the US that are currently frowning upon face recognition. So again, you always want to future-proof and understand what are all the capabilities of a device before you invest in it. And before you purchase any type of body temperature reader, you're going to want to know what application, where is it going to be installed? Can you go with a less expensive thermopile sensor or thermographic imaging camera? Are you in a state where face recognition is not allowed? So maybe you want to go with palm recognition or use card access or so on. So from the front, these devices look very, very similar, but you want to make sure what are they capable of doing from reporting, accountability perspective, future-proofing these devices. So here's just a little table of what I just described before. There are basically two types of thermal sensors. The sensor on the left is a little bit larger, and that's called a thermal imaging camera. And these devices are far more accurate than the thermopile sensor. So certainly, if you have a client that will be installing these devices near an exterior door, or maybe a revolving door, or near an open window, or where perhaps you might have a very cold or very hot environments, depending on the climate outside. If that's your environment, then you're going to want to spend a little bit more money and invest in a device that has a thermal imaging camera on it, which will self-calibrate. However, if you can guarantee a climate-controlled room, then save yourself money with a thermopile sensor. So oftentimes I'll recommend clients test both, and then they can decide which one is more appropriate. But again, certainly if it's in a climate-controlled room, the thermopile sensor will save you money and performs fantastic. The reading range is a little bit greater with the thermal imaging camera. I mentioned before you don't need to calibrate it, and it is far more measuring points. So if you really want accuracy and you don't want to have to recalibrate, go with a device that has a thermal imaging camera. And if you're not sure, just ask the vendor to explain to you what type of technology they utilize. So here's a snapshot of our model SF1008T Plus. T stands for thermal imaging. This is just an example of a device that has a thermal imaging camera. If it's being placed in an environment where the air temperature varies a lot and you might have a lot of drafts. So you always want to go with a thermal imaging camera. Now, if you're using these devices for access control, there's nothing more convenient than face recognition because, in traditional access control, people are using keys, which can be lost or stolen, or they could be using a proximity card. A card can be lost, stolen if it's in your back pocket, the antenna can crack. Even using your phone. I mean, using mobile credentials now is becoming more and more popular, utilizing Bluetooth. But if you think about it, it requires that your battery hasn't failed. You have to ensure that your Bluetooth signal is working. Sometimes people do forget to bring their phones. They left it behind at their desk. So anytime you have to carry or remember a credential to access a door, there's always going to have some level of inconvenience when you forget it, or it could be lost or stolen. But with a biometric, that never happens. So we always recommend at ZK Techo, although we do have card access systems, traditional card access systems and mobile devices, we always recommend biometrics simply for the security and the convenience of never having to worry about losing it. In our case, our face recognition works from upwards to 2 feet away, and it's got a 30-degree toleration. So when utilizing our technology, you don't even need to look at the camera. Typically, if we get 70% of your face or more, the device will recognize you and will allow you unencumbered access. These devices I mentioned before, whether you're using temperature detection or if you're using people counting or you're using any type of face recognition, typically these devices can either be installed on the wall, on a turnstile, or on a free on a stand. We have a few different styles of mounting poles available. So you don't necessarily have to connect them to your turnstile. You can just put it on a stand. However, we do recommend if you are concerned with maintaining maximum allowed occupancy levels, you want to have a barrier, whether it's a turnstile or a gate or a door. So we always recommend, have a turnstile that meets your requirements. ZK Techo is one of many different manufacturers of turnstiles, but again, if you want to eliminate the need of having to pay someone to manually count people and then manually determine who's allowed in, you'll have no accountability. There's no auditing. You want to make this an electronic system just to reduce the need for labor or at least have an electronic auditing system. And of course, you also want to have management software. Most all of today's software now has a mobile app to make it very convenient. In our case, with regards to body temperature detection or people counting, you're always going to want to have monitoring software. In many cases, you'll see suppliers that have a single device, and maybe it'll do an audio or visual alert, but that's the extent of it. You want to make sure that your supplier also has an integrated management software so that you can have many, many devices. In our case, we can monitor up to 8,000 devices collectively. So this scales on a crazy level. We also have real-time alerting, monitoring, and you always want that report available, whether it's for your own purposes to improve your operational efficiency, or you may need it for accounting purposes, or maybe you have some type of audit, whether it's a government or a supplier. Here at ZK Techo, we're a manufacturer with over 50 global offices, and so often we do receive audits from local governments, ensuring that everyone is adhering to best practices. So you always want to be ready for audits for operational efficiencies as well as any third parties. Also, if you look at this technology, many of the pieces of the technology I mentioned before were turnstiles, were people counting, were access control, and there are many vendors, but usually all of them always focus on one aspect of that technology. In fact, even turnstile manufacturers, they make turnstiles. They don't make access control devices. And if you wish to have a turnstile installed with access control, typically as an integrator, you have to purchase your turnstile from one company. You then have to purchase your access control from another company. You then have to figure out how to make everything integrate, and then you ship it to the end user. Well, with ZK Techo, again, just one small plug, we're the manufacturers of all this technology. So one part number gets you a turnstile with an integrated access control system, whether that device, whether the turnstile is being released by a QR code or a Bluetooth signal or face recognition or palm recognition, it all comes from ZK. So again, as installers, and a lot of this technology, if it's a turnstile, if it's a local metal detector, it can be very expensive when you're shipping it. So to reduce shipping expense, it's always cheaper if you have one vendor that could actually provide you the integrated solution right to your doorstep. So we've combined all these technologies into a platform that we call Safe to Green. So when someone enters a business or a school, we have outdoor face recognition, and then once they enter the room, we also have readers that can read body temperature, and can also make sure you have a mask before entering the turnstile.
The process is quick and simple. First, users approach the turnstile. The SpeedFace Plus device will verify their identity with face recognition technology, eliminating the need for an ID card. The device will also conduct a skin temperature check to confirm if it's in acceptable range. Once identity and acceptable skin temperature are confirmed, the turnstile will release, allowing the user to enter the facility. SBTL 8000 provides field upgradable.
So this is an example how user-friendly, fast, and simple this technology works. As people enter the room, whether it's a registered employee or perhaps it's a visiting guest, at minimum, you want to check their body temperature to see if it's normal, or check to see if they have a mask. And if you're no longer concerned with either of the two, certainly occupancy is another reason why you may want to restrict access. So if we review why occupancy control, as mentioned before, it provides automatic people counting, and this can eliminate the need for having to pay somebody just to count. In addition to the people counting, you can also have options for body temperature mask detection, which, by the way, you can turn on or off anytime you like, because this one device does everything. Now, you can have the device just light up green or red and allow either your people counter that you're paying, or allow your visitors to self-monitor themselves. So you can just have that red or green light condition, or you can actually connect that people counting device to a turnstile gate, and then you have real occupancy control. Now, when utilizing these devices, you also want to make sure that you're maximizing its utility value. So you want to make sure, can the device also trigger video cameras? Because maybe you want to have video evidence of someone when they pass through the turnstile or gate. Do you want to trigger an alarm? Do you want to actually keep count of everybody who's entered the room? If you want to measure how many times you had over exceeded your occupancy levels, you want to have all that reporting capability. In the event of working with ZK face recognition technology, we can recognize people upwards from 8 or 9 feet away and receive real-time alert notifications. So again, the purpose of this presentation was to make sure everyone is aware of the importance of people counting and occupancy control, not just for safety and security, but also from an operational efficiency perspective. Small business owners may not be aware that this technology exists, and they may not be aware that it's actually much more affordable than you think, because traditional means of providing this solution was investing in multiple security cameras focused on different spots, then having analytic software running on an NVR, hosted in a cloud with recurring costs. These things get very, very expensive. Perhaps they're affordable for a Fortune 1000 company, but for small business, and there's actually over 30 million small businesses in the US, most all that technology is cost prohibitive, but if you can incorporate all that technology into a single embedded hardware device, such as the ones I described in this video, it's surprisingly affordable. And of course, it makes for a much more interesting conversation when you ask a client, what are you doing about reopening? What are you doing about compliance? Those are the kind of questions that an end user wants to engage in with you, as opposed to just trying to find another product opportunity or a service opportunity. These are the kind of conversations that really customers want to engage with you. So Jillian, that concludes the presentation. I encourage anyone, please reach out to us if you have any questions. I try to provide big picture, whether ZK provides a solution or perhaps sometimes third parties are better suited. You're always going to find consultants at ZK Techo to steer you in the right way.
Thanks, Larry, and thank you again for providing that unbiased education to the folks on the call. If you all have a question for Larry, you can type that in the Q&A icon at the bottom of your control panel. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can comment those questions to the ESA account. I have a couple to get us going here. Larry, can you describe again the difference between people counting and occupancy control?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as a patron or a consumer, I'm sure most all of us have seen people counters. Right? Those are the people that the store owner will employ that will be standing at the door, and they'll have a handheld clicker, and they're just clicking away as people come in, they're clicking as people go out. And so, the business owner presumes that that person will monitor traffic and stop people from entering. So you kind of are reliant on that person. And a lot of the times it's temporary staff, so they may not even have any loyalty or allegiance to the business owner. And certainly this is not their field of expertise. So people counting, certainly, it seems like a quick fix because they know I can call my temp agency, I can hand them a $5 clicker, and it's only going to cost me $15 an hour. got it. But you got to multiply that out by 8, 10 hours a day, 40, 60 hours a week. That's $15 an hour. It adds up. And you can't even be sure that they're doing a good job because it's all on them. So as opposed to just people counting, we recommend automating that through occupancy control. Occupancy control takes that people counting function away and puts it in a device that can actually lock down if you've over exceeded that allowed room occupancy. So occupancy control is automating people counting and integrating it with your access control to ensure that there's never a violation of exceeding maximum room occupancy.
Definitely some great little nuggets of messaging to be able to communicate to your
Sure.
customers there. Um, Other vendors are offering occupancy control. What makes the ZK Techo solution different than what others have out there?
Yeah, Joe, I'm glad you mentioned that because sometimes first-time customers will say, "Well, Larry, I've seen technology similar to yours in this location and that location, and yeah, we didn't invent any one aspect of it." And I mentioned before, traditional occupancy control, a lot of the times people have some cameras. So the integrator will convince that business owner purchase some additional cameras, and then we'll figure out a way to integrate it with the access control system. So we'll take the video management, the access control, we'll try to integrate it. Oh, I'm sorry, the analytical software actually is a streaming service, and we have to charge you on a monthly basis for those analytics because the analytics are updated. And so, that's how traditionally occupancy control was addressed, and why probably very few people on the call have ever sold it because it's very expensive and cost prohibitive. So the difference is ZK, because we're primarily a hardware manufacturer, we take all that technology and we embed it in our device. So we eliminate the need for external cameras, we eliminate the need for third-party analytics, we eliminate the need for streaming subscription-based software. All you really need to do is connect our device to that access control unit, or even put on a freestanding pole. But you can actually utilize your existing turnstile or gate and just purchase a standalone device. And I'm not going to suggest we're the only ones in the world doing this, but I would implore all you integrators, these are the type of solutions your end users want to hear about that are typically cost prohibitive. And there are ways to lower the cost and make it equally effective. So I would encourage you all, please look into this.
Talk to me a little bit about the facial recognition. So, how does that work when wearing a mask?
Yeah, well, basically because face recognition has become, so powerful that it can actually pick up enough information on what's exposed to the face, even when a mask is being worn. Now, again, if you're in the media and you want to make a case that face recognition doesn't work, watch this, and they cover their entire face with a mask. I'm making a joke, but they really try to test the audience. At some point, they know they're going to lose credibility. So, and also many end users who don't seek the guidance of their integrator, they tell me, oh, it doesn't work. And I discover when I look at their enrollment pictures, their faces are already covered, they're contorted, and so on. So, all these technologies, even Verkada, who got beat up recently because of the whole breach over at Tesla, these are tools. A tool can be used properly or misused. It's really the onus on the person who's using the tool. So to answer your question, Jim, about the face recognition, best practices for face recognition is you enroll a person with their face not covered by anything, and then if they wish to be identified with a mask, put the mask on, but let's not be ridiculous and cover the eyes. A mask should be worn just over the mouth or maybe just a little over the nose. And typically that's enough. Now, in some cases where you're not getting the results that you want, ZK Techo is unique in that we also provide palm recognition technology. So you can actually hold your palm within 12 inches of the device,
Mhm.
and it will recognize you and is clearly as secure and accurate as face recognition. And again, everyone on this call, I'm sure you never heard of it. Your customers never asked you about it because your customers don't know about it. Palm recognition is very, very popular overseas. Fujitsu used to be the only palm recognition patent holder. Everyone knows about Fujitsu, but now ZK actually is the second patent holder. So palm recognition, it's touchless. There's no privacy concerns anywhere in the world that I know about, and completely convenient and secure. So trust me, if you introduce palm recognition to your clients, they're gonna be like, whoa, I never heard of this. Well, it works fantastic, and there's not one legislator or one lawyer in the US currently who's trying to sue somebody for, they got my palm, Jillian, they got my palm. And they call up the ACLU, and there's all these lawsuits. So palm recognition, I assure you, and there's no extra cost for it. It's included with our face recognition.
Okay, great. Anthony, you've got some great questions here, so I'm going to fire away. How sensitive is the technology to climate controlled rooms?
Yeah, well, that's really what I want to get to, because as a manufacturer, of course, I get annoyed when the media takes advantage of interviewing, or takes any type of scenario, because if it's sunny and there's no one getting shot, no one wants to read about that. That doesn't make news, right? People want to hear about the snow blizzard, the 18-car crash, and so on. So if anybody has an opportunity, if you can assure yourselves it's being a body temperature reader is being installed in a climate controlled room, any vendor's thermopile sensor will work fine, because that's what it was designed for, that particular application. So save yourself some money, and I prefer you, of course, you work with ZK Techo, but whoever you're working with, typically a climate controlled room, you'll have no issues whatsoever. Only if that device is going to be installed near an exterior door are you starting to actually have some risk that maybe it won't work as effectively, or maybe you'll need to recalibrate. That's when you really want to use a device that has a thermal imaging camera connected to it.
Thank you. We've got another one here. Does the technology also have the possibility to use an iris scan?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny, especially with new salespeople. I might get a call from one of my new salespeople. Larry, the customer needs an iris scanner, and of course the salesperson wants to make the customer happy, and they want to make a sale. So they want to be able to say, of course we do, but no customer wants an iris scanner. No customer wants a face scanner. No customer wants a prox card reader. They want access control that's meant for their application. Now, if they're concerned with having a credential lost, stolen, or misplaced, okay, that narrows it down to biometrics. Now, what biometric is best for you? You have to decide. Well, the least expensive would be fingerprint, but some people have privacy concerns with fingerprint, or some people realize now that fingerprinting always doesn't work if your skin has cuts, scratches, or scrapes. So typically, the next most expensive would be face recognition or palm recognition, because you don't have any of those issues. Palm is better if you've got privacy concerns. Now, typically, as you start to go up, actually hand scanners or iris readers, those tend to be far more expensive technology. And I'm sure any of the iris vendors will be on the call. They'll say, that's not true, that's not true. I get it. But really, if you compare the price of an iris reader to a face, palm, or fingerprint reader, at that point, it's going to become probably cost prohibitive. It might suit you well. You might be working in a U.S. federal government establishment that has a mandate only iris readers are required, and that may very well true. But in the commercial space, typically fingerprint, face, or palm are going to be equally effective as an iris reader and far less expensive.
Got it. If you have any additional questions for Larry, go ahead and type them into that Q&A icon at the bottom of your control panel here, or post them on Facebook in the comment section and we'll get them over. Do your readers work with existing access control systems if they're already in place?
Yeah, again, that's a great question, and it's not unique to ZK Techo. But whatever device you're using, in fact, oftentimes most customers, they already have an existing card access system, and then they want to add an added layer of security or safety. Perhaps it might be a body temperature reader, it might be a mask reader, or maybe it's a biometric reader. But in most cases, you can take anyone's reader, as long as it has a weakened output, and connect that weakened reader to the existing card access system. So that's not unique to ZK Techo. Any vendor, if they have a brain, should have a weakened output on their device. But clearly, from an implementation perspective, that weakened device now acts as a kill switch. So let's say you are feverish, you're running whatever, 102, 103. Your card is still valid. So you'll flash your card to the door, but if that device says that you have a fever or that you're not wearing your mask, it will kill that signal to the panel, and that turnstile or door or gate can remain locked. So adding a body temperature or mass detection reader or any type of biometric to an existing card access system is a great way to add more security, more safety without having to pull anything out.
Yeah, it's like another layer.
Yeah, that's all security is, Jillian, just adding layers.
All right, it looks like we've got all of the questions that were posed in our Q&A module answered here. I don't see anything further on Facebook. So if those are all of our questions, I'd like to thank Larry. ZK Techo is a strategic partner of ESA in 2021. So we certainly appreciate that. Those are partners who are investing directly back into the pro installed channel and supporting their channel partners. So thank you, ZK Techo. I also want to thank all the attendees that have taken some time out to talk through access control with us today. If that's all there is, Larry, I'll give you a moment here to kind of wrap it up and say goodbye to everyone. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next ESA webinar.
Yeah, guys, thank you again, Jillian, the whole education team at ESA. Just continue creating relevant content that's current, that's again relevant, especially among COVID-19 times. And Jillian, just you and the team, thank you so much. We've enjoyed our 5-year run with you, and just kind of